What's up, everybody? This is Chris Surratt bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicle. On today's show, we're going to do a lot of talking about EV vehicles. We're going to do a lot of talking about tariffs. First off, we're going to start talking about Mexico and how a lot of overseas automakers are trying to use Mexico as a place for them to put together their cars so they can slide them into the U.S. Also, we're going to talk about the EU and how it is also putting tariffs on China to avoid all of the China EV vehicles coming into the EU as well, because let's face it, the Chinese EV vehicles are definitely becoming a problem. China has, to some degree, perfected that creation, and they're making them at such great prices that it's going to become a problem for most automakers around the world. And last but not least, we're going to head over to our standard trope and talk about some layoffs with some automakers. And where the layoffs are happening is just not where we usually talk about it. So let's get started. First, we're going to read a quick article talking about the whole Mexico-U.S. border situation when it comes to EV vehicles. Now, to preempt this, what's been happening is a lot of automakers, specifically BYD, all kinds of automakers have decided, and Stellantis as well, has decided that they're going to start building factories and plants over in Mexico. Doing it for a lot of reasons, cheap labor to some degree. Land is fairly cheap as well, and and the key component of it is that, to some degree, if your products are coming out of Mexico, then you, to some degree, avoid some tariffs. So the U.S. itself is trying to put a stop to that. They know what's going on. They're not stupid. So we're going to read a little story about how Mexico kind of feels about this situation, okay? Alright, so this is from My News. It says, Mexico warns U.S. ban on Chinese car tech could hurt its automotive industry. U.S. proposal would effectively ban the import of Chinese brand vehicles even if they were assembled in Mexico. Trying to combat this. The Mexican government on Monday raised concerns about the Biden administration's proposal to prohibit key Chinese software and hardware in connected vehicles on American roads over national security concerns. Mexico's economy ministry said in a filing with the U.S. Commerce Department the proposal could have a substantial impact on Mexico's automotive industry. Economically, it poses potential trade barriers, disruptions to supply chains, increased production costs, and a possible risk of reduced direct and indirect employment. Car and Tech Group separately on Monday asked the administration for changes and for more time before the rules take effect. The proposal marked a significant escalation in U.S. restrictions on Chinese vehicles, software, and components, and would effectively ban the import of Chinese brand vehicles even if they were assembled in Mexico. In September, the Biden administration locked in steep tariff rises on Chinese imports, including 100% duty on electric vehicles and increase on EV batteries and key minerals. Mexico said the proposal could violate North American free trade rules and lead to increased production costs due to the shift in suppliers of auto parts and components within the automotive industry's pre-planned supply chain. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to use the North American free trade agreement to bypass all these hefty tariffs that we've decided to put on them, to try to even the playing field, as it were, when it came to EV vehicles. The Commerce Department did not immediately comment, because they ain't tripping. The proposal would make software prohibitions effective in the 2027 model year. The hardware ban would take effect in the 2030 model year or January 2029. That's kind of far away. The Alliance of Automotive Innovation, representing General Motors, Toyota Motor, Volkswagen, Hyundai Motor, and other major car makers, asked for at least one additional year to meet the hardware requirement. The Consumer Technology Association asked for both deadlines to be extended by 2 years, as did Honda Motor, in order to conduct crucial testing, validations, and updates of necessary contracts. The Commerce Department hopes to finalize the proposal by January 20 The rules cover all on-road vehicles but exclude agricultural or mining vehicles not used on public roads, as well as drones and trains. All right. All right, my friends. So, what are we talking about? The Mexican government is looking into the future and seeing that if we continue with the tariffs and the getting away from the North American Free Trade Agreement and demanding that there be major tariffs put on Chinese vehicles and other vehicles, then it's going to be a problem for Mexico. So, I'm sorry, but that's not the point here. The point is that things created in America have priority. That's the point of this, by American. So what we're saying is that we're not going to allow you, or they're not going to allow you to skate around what we're trying to do here. We're trying to rebuild America. And for us to rebuild America, we have to make sure that the products here in America are put first on the shelf. We want to make sure that not only are products put first on the shelf, but to make sure that they're equally accessible as it comes to in price. Now, there's a lot going to need to happen for that to happen because, greed is a bitch, and a lot of people are greedy and deciding to hike up prices, which is, the way that China does it or other countries would do it would be that their government controls it to a certain degree, to the point where they aren't allowed to hike it or price gouge or all these things that we're allowed to do here in America that are hurting us. So, and not only that, they price them to export. They price them to make them very comparable to the prices here in America or cheaper, so that more people will buy their product. It just makes sense. It just makes economical sense. So what we're trying to do, of course, is we're trying to quell that. We got to get the American automakers robust again. We have to get the American automakers the ability to sell their products again, and that's what these tariffs are about, because all of these products, cars, steel, electronics, all these products that are coming from overseas are just so low in price, but of course they're low in quality as well. So it's one of those situations where we're just trying our best to make sure that we quell any entry of products that would hurt the American economy, and that's what this is doing. So specifically with the automotive industry, we don't want them to go over to Mexico and build their products there and then ship them, have them cross the border right there and avoid the tariffs, because that's going to hurt us. And we're trying our best nowadays to stop doing things that hurt us. The automotive industry is in dire shape because of this. This is strictly the reason that the U.S. automakers are in such dire straits as they are. So much competition, specifically when it comes to EV vehicles in this day and age, are killing them. They don't have the technology to compete with the EV vehicles coming out of China. They don't have any of that. Most of their parts are coming from China. So they screwed themselves in one aspect. So we don't care that Mexico don't care. We don't care that Mexico is mad and they're going to be upset and they're going to start hurting because we're not following the North American Free Trade Agreement. I think we probably should get away from that altogether if all these Chinese and other automakers are building plants over in Mexico just to get their product over here. We're done with that. We are trying our best to build America back to what it was, specifically for me, the automotive industry. All right, let's keep going. So, now, America is not the only place that's having problems with EV vehicles. That's a fact. And the EU, over in Europe, has decided that they are also having the same kind of problems with China when it comes to EV vehicles and how well they're priced and how available they are to their consumers. So they are going to put a kibosh to that with the introduction of tariffs as well. Let's check that out.
In a move sure to rile Beijing, the EU plans to raise tariffs on Chinese-made electric cars. The new duties will range from 7.8% for Tesla to over 35% for state-backed firm SAIC. That's on top of a standard 10% import levy. The extra tariffs were officially approved Tuesday and will take effect on Wednesday. The EU says the move is needed to counter China's unfair state support for its firms, including special loans and cheap materials. It says millions of extra Chinese EVs are likely headed to Europe otherwise, with the US and
that's another thing. I understand, and I know that as a people we desire less government involvement in our companies and everything like that. But we continuously have to see that when it comes to Chinese companies and the Chinese government, that they seem to help their companies and to make sure that their companies stay on top. And I think that's what we should be doing for our companies too. Let's keep going.
Canada having already imposed their own steep duties. The China Chamber of Commerce in the EU expressed deep disappointment over what it called an unfair measure and criticized slow progress on talks over the issue. Beijing has responded with investigations into EU brandy, dairy, and pork, and has challenged the EU's actions at the World Trade Organization. European car makers are dealing with an influx of cheaper electric cars from China, which now hold 8% of the EU market, up from less than 1% in 2019. That could reach 15% by 2025, with prices for Chinese cars typically 20% lower than European-made vehicles. Some EU member states aren't happy with the EU move. Germany, the region's largest car maker, was among countries opposed, fearing its big auto exporters could face retaliation. The country's economy ministry has called for a diplomatic solution to reduce trade tensions and protect EU industry.
Wow, that's a little bit better. So, let's face it. Everybody is dealing with issues when it comes to the manufacture of EV vehicles coming out of China and their availability, their price range, and the desire for the Chinese government to get these vehicles out to the world. And Europe as well as America are places where the consumers and the people desire variety. And that's what we're talking about. They desire variety. So they like the ability to choose between a whole bunch of things when they make their choices. And, they want it to be at a great price. So the Chinese EV market is killing in those categories. It's killing. It's killing in Europe. It's killing in America. Probably killing in China. I don't know. But it's killing in Mexico too. And the moves that they're making are the correct moves. Moving their facilities in North American free trade places like Mexico. But it only seems this way, but I'm pretty sure there's other things that America and Europe could do to fight this. But the way they're going about fighting it right now is new tariffs. They're saying, hey, we ain't going to tell y'all outright that y'all can't ship y'all product over here and sell it over here, but y'all just gonna have to pay a little bit more, which is gonna cause the consumer to have to pay a little bit more, which is gonna make your product price point more closer to the Europe products or the American products, which would create better competition and allow the automakers from Europe and America to sell more products. That's the goal. That's the desire. That's what they want to do. Of course, China don't want that. China want to keep selling their product at a great number. And it just seems like America and Europe are just so behind China when it comes to EV vehicles, and it's starting to really, really show. And the American people and the European people don't have really a idea on how to fight it other than just try to charge them more money. And that doesn't seem to be working either. So we just have to keep a watchful eye of this situation is going to keep to progress. Once the presidential race is over, this is going to hit the fan to some degree, depending on who becomes president. Europe has already decided their tariffs went in effect on Tuesday. So they're active now. They don't plan to change that, and then they also are going to try to consolidate their automakers and try to buy European. Instead of buying American, they got to buy European. So that's their goal now as well. And it is what, as a country, America, Europe has to do. You know, these countries allow free trade to corrupt them to some degree. Free trade allowed these overseas companies to ship so many products that were a lot cheaper than American-made products. You know, and of course, in most cases, some cases, more inferior than American products, but most Americans didn't care about that because of the price point. So it's going to continue that way, and we just hope that here in America and in Europe that, you know, we got to find another way to it than tariffs. I don't think there's got to be another way than tariffs to go about this. If you just sit down and be like, hey, you have to convince the American people and the European people to buy the products that their country is making, and that's going to be the hardest thing. That's just going to be the hardest thing. All right, let's keep going. Alrighty then. So, last but not least, of course, what are we talking about? Layoffs. Now, this is a little different story than usual. We're talking about Volkswagen layoffs and plant closings in Germany. Now, you know it's got to be a cold day in hell that Germany is closed, or a German company is closing German factories in Germany. That's horrible. But let's face it, Volkswagen relies a lot on the American people to buy their product, and Volkswagen hasn't been a hot seller for quite a while now, specifically after the whole fuel gauge debacle, where they had the situation where the car system was falsifying how many miles per gallon you were getting. So let's check out this story about the layoffs at Volkswagen, and let's see how it affects us here in America.
Volkswagen plans to lay off tens of thousands of workers and close at least 3 factories in Germany. That's according to the carmaker's Works Council head Monday. They further said the German auto giant wants to shrink its remaining plants in Europe's biggest economy. Carsten Buchling is VW Kassel plant. Carsten further said the German auto...
Hold on, I wanted y'all to see this. You hear it. Let's see this thing. This is an ID4 battery. This is an ID. They're building an ID4. I know that because I had to take an ID4 apart one time when it wouldn't start, and an engineer from Volkswagen came in. They had to take it all apart, and that, my friends, is the battery. That thing on the ground that they got their hands on right there is a battery. It's crazy.
The giant wants to shrink its remaining plants in Europe's biggest economy. Carsten Buchling is VW Kassel Plant Works Council head.
And unfortunately, we had to announce that the board intends to close at least 3 sites, carry out mass redundancies for all other sites, and reduce the number of products. And for all other employees who are still allowed to work for Volkswagen, their pay will be massively cut. The board of management is planning a pay cut of 10%, immediately and permanently.
Europe's biggest car maker has negotiated with unions for weeks on plans to revamp its business and cut costs. It includes potential plant closures in Germany for the first time, and the news fell hard on the workforce. Britta Yohn has been with VW since 1997.
These are very drastic cuts, and they obviously cause fear. We have to see how we can feed our families and what's next for this region, since this has personal consequences, but also for the region, and in fact for Germany.
Works Council head Daniela Cavallo said management is absolutely serious. She added it is not sabre-rattling as part of a collective bargaining round. The comments mark a major escalation of a conflict between VW's workers and the group's management. VW is under severe pressure from high energy and labour costs and Asian competition. It also faces weaker demand in Europe and China and a slower than expected electric transition. VW said in a statement it would make proposals for how to cut labour costs on Wednesday. It's the same day workers and management meet for the second round of wage talks and the carmaker releases third quarter results. The automaker said it was still committed to finding solutions for the situation jointly with labour representatives.
There you have it, guys. It's more layoffs, more problems. I mean, even over in Germany, layoffs, factory closings, and there's a lot of reasons for that, of course. And the worst part about for us here in America is that it's going to affect the availability for the Volkswagen dealerships to sell their cars. They're going to probably have layoffs to some degree. Volkswagen is probably going to pull some of its support from its franchises here in America. And it's going to have to. If it's cutting costs to the point where they're closing 3 plants, then they're cutting some major costs. And it's sad. I always, when I talk about layoffs, I don't care where it is. I don't care who you are. It's a sad thing. They talked about that lady. She was there, over 27 years at that plant. And now she's talking about it's going to be hard to feed her family. And the thing about it is that, growing up working in Indiana, and the people I knew that worked at factories, at the Ford factory and stuff like that, the UAW, these are good jobs. These people were getting paid well. These were the people who did well in the neighborhood. Because they had the good jobs. They were probably the first ones to have a home. They were probably the first ones to have the nice cars, because these jobs paid well, considerably well for these people. And to lose that, no matter where you are, is going to be the biggest hurdle of your life. If she worked there for 27 years, she doesn't know how to do anything else. She can't just move on and find another job that probably pays as well as the one she has. And at this point, we already know that they had 10% pay cuts. So she's already had her pay cut. And in the future, it might be to the point where she loses her job entirely. This is a sad state of affairs when it comes to the automotive industry around the world. And like they said in the article, China EVs are killing everybody. Just like we were saying recently about Europe and the situation over there when they're adding these tariffs. The desire for the world, the tree-hugging world, to move to EVs has put the whole world in a massive grip when it comes to the automotive industry. And it's forcing all of these automakers, Volkswagens, the European automakers, US automakers, they're all rushing their heads to move on to EV vehicles. And China's like 6-7 years ahead of us. 6-7 years ahead of us. At least 5 years ahead of us, we know, but at least 6-7 years ahead of us. With the technology, with the batteries. That's why the majority of the EV vehicles here in America that the US automakers are making, they're making them with parts from China. So it is going to be an extremely hard climb for the Americans, for the Europeans, for all these automakers competing with China to get to a point where they're not only making EV vehicles that compete with Chinese EV vehicles, but get to a point where they're not dependent on China to get their parts for their EV vehicles. It'll be years before that, and it's going to be, it is destroying the automakers from top to bottom. specifically Volkswagen at this point. We know Stellantis is hurting. We know all of these places are extremely upside down when it comes to their sales. I saw an article about Aston Martin losing. Aston Martin is one of those companies that doesn't have to promote anything. They do barely any marketing, but now they got to do marketing because they had low sales. But because the people who standardly would buy Aston Martins are out there buying Tesla Cybertrucks, out there buying Teslas, because they look like Aston Martins, kind of, sort of, super cool, super sleek, super EV, super new. Porsche Taycan is really taking over from Aston Martin, really, if you want to go there. But it's guys, it's a horrible situation all the way around. We talked about Mexico saying it having a problem. And Mexico is the one place that we can say is in a good position. They're in a good position because lots of automakers, Stellantis, BYD, all these automakers are bidding for an opportunity to build factories and plants in Mexico. Cheap labor, land is vast, lots of space to do it, and the people are cool to some degree. So what's going to become of all these automakers and all these places when the future hits us to understand that we're so behind China? Are we just going to have to get with China? Hey, I ain't going to lie to y'all. I have my eyes set on buying one of them BYD trucks. It's tight as hell, man. It was bad. I had it for a week. It was tight. I was everywhere in that thing. And I had it for a week and I never charged it. Never charged it. Just drove that thing. It was nice, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. And that's the problem. BYD for me. I don't know about all the other ones. I know Polestar is complaining and all these other EV makers are complaining. But BYD is making a move. I know BYD is in talks to buy some U.S. automakers. I know they put a kibosh on building their factory in Mexico until the presidency election is over. I think BYD is who the American people need to worry about. I know I would worry about them if I had my dealership up and running. And then again, I really think the way the world is going, my dealership is probably going to end up being a BYD dealership or electric vehicle dealership, either way. But let's face it, the desire is to make sure that the American people have a good vehicle to drive. And financially, economically, America or Europe can't compete with China. Can't compete with the ability for China to create cheap products for their vehicles, the ability for them to put their vehicles out at a really decent price. The problem with that is pretty much government ran. The government makes sure that they do these things to make sure that China as a whole stays on top. And that's what we got to get back to. That's what America has to get back to. That's what Europe has to get back to. Making sure we make sure that we're taken care of first. We want to be diplomatic. We want to make sure that we help you over here, we help you over there. But what we need to do first is help ourselves. That's what my whole problem with them. I don't want to get out of automotive. I really just talk about automotive stuff. But my problem with this whole immigration situation, it's just almost the same thing. We're doing all of this stuff for these immigrants, specifically the illegal ones, and we're not doing nothing for the American people. It's the same thing to me. It's the same thing. We giving all our money to Ukraine and Israel, I don't know, for proxy wars, but we're not taking care of the people at home. Alright, my friends, I'm going to let y'all get up on the nada. It was a pleasure as always, and I want to say that I really, from the bottom of my heart, I probably got like 3 people that watch consistently, and I really thank y'all. First time that somebody sent me some information or ideas for storylines, so I really appreciate that, and so I want to thank you. And please like, share, subscribe to the channel. My name's Chris Surratt, and I'm out of here. Peace.